Committee. My name is Philip Napolitano, and I am the co-chair of the committee. This meeting is called to order at 7:04 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by Assistant District Manager Brendan Burke. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Ann Seligman has volunteered to take minutes tonight. Thank you, Ann. We will now take attendance by roll call. Brendan will conduct the roll call.
Committee members, I will call your name and you will unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. I know that Jean is absent. B. Disman?
I'm here. Do you only see me once and hear me once?
I hear you once. Let me see if I only see you once. I see you twice technically, but the second time it looks like you only have a camera that is off and that you don't even have a microphone. But you count once.
Okay, thanks. Crazy night. Thank you.
No problem. Charles Fernandez.
Present.
Andrew Gross. Okay, I do not see Andrew here. Phil Napolitano.
Present.
Matt Roberts.
Present.
Larry Shire. Looks like Larry is not here. Ann Seligman.
Here.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
Ronnie White.
Present.
And James Wilson.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Brendan. The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the October 4th and October 12th meetings were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt both sets of minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting either set of minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Please indicate which set of minutes you object to when I call on you. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the October 4th and October 12th meetings are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. 1, no one may speak until granted the floor. 2, committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. 3, the chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us to any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing any information, like an email address, that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. 4, when a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. And 5, we are required by New York state law to have a transcript of the meeting. So please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. The first item on tonight's agenda is the discussion of a possible resolution to rename the M15 Select Bus Service stop at First Avenue and Mitchell Place to First Avenue and East 50th Street. Committee members, what are your thoughts?
I see Anne has her hand raised.
Anne?
So it's a kind of a shame that Andrew's not here because I think this was kind of something that he was he's something he was promoting. I certainly don't disagree with it, although I kind of thought we had said it was going to be changing it from Mitchell Place to 49th Street, which would be consistent with the DOT, or I'm not sure. I think it's DOT, not MTA naming protocols, that it's like the street it just passed, which is why it was Mitchell. So I don't know, Colleen, if you can weigh in on, or if anybody can weigh in on, I thought we were going to say we wanted it to be consistent with the protocols.
I'm sorry, Anne, what was the question?
So instead of changing the bus stop that now says on the M15, it now says Mitchell Place, which, like, unless you live in the neighborhood, nobody knows what Mitchell Place is. So
But there's a
the
sign that says Mitchell Place at the corner.
yes, but what we were saying was that we were going to request that it
We're
be
considering,
named a cross street that would be more, more familiar for people who did not know the area. I mean, Mitchell Place goes for a block, right? I mean, it's not part of the grid. And so that was our motivation for doing it. But I had thought we had said 49th Street because that was the street that was just passed.
Okay, just to interject here, this is Brendan, just a clarifying comment. I was looking at both the transcript from the October 4th Transportation Committee meeting where this was brought up, as well as the minutes from that meeting. Looking at the transcript from that meeting, Andrew Gross, what he first suggested was First Avenue and 50th Street. In the minutes from the October 4th meeting, it said First Avenue and 49th Street, East 49th Street, or First Avenue and East 50th Street. So I just thought I would add that.
Colleen, can you offer some guidance on what
I mean,
our resolution should indicate?
listen, the only guidance I can give you is if the community board wants us to look at it, just, request it in writing that you are asking us to evaluate the renaming of the bus stop sign at that particular location and what the current sign says and what you would like it to be changed to.
So we can make it either one we want. Since we're asking.
This is James Wilson.
Yes.
There is a basis for Mitchell Place and 49th. It's more historical because as you travel up the hill, Mitchell Place, you have a very famous area where very wealthy families from New York had their residences overlooking the East River.
Oh, yes, that is a beautiful view.
That area of Sutton Place sort of continues that feeling that starts at that area around 49th Street. I think when the United Nations came and moved continuously north, they began to take away properties, and the major house it was a residential house, but it became an office building. Your community board offices are in that building there. Or they were at one time, I'll put it that way.
Thank you.
Little history.
Dee?
Thank you. So I think when we were talking about it, at the last meeting, and it doesn't make a difference whether it's 49th or 50th Street. Where the bus really stops is on 50th Street. But we talked about renaming it because basically people that come to the city, if they're trying to determine a stop, or even city residents, saying something is Mitchell Place doesn't really give significance as to what street are they getting off. And I do understand the historical nature. So I think part of the suggestion was, although you read the minutes, was First Avenue and 50th Street, also known as the Mitchell Place area if it's significant historically. But I don't think it was meant for ease of people traveling.
Brian?
So, I have to say that part of my inclination right now is to just call the question, get a reso, sort of agreed to conceptually and then get it going. And I feel like given some of the questions we're asking, it would probably roll over to next month anyway, because we'd want to get text of a reso. That's usually my instinct, because I feel like tabling something or punting something to next month is a way of kind of delaying something. This is not something reactive we're doing. This is something that we don't have a time limit on. And I think there's a lot of questions coming up on this. If we don't know exactly what we want, we should form a task force. You guys should write a reso. We come back with it next month and vote on actual language. Specifically figure out what street you want to rename it to that abides by MTA or DOT guidelines. Figure all that stuff out. A couple of you guys are interested in this, so just email each other and take a month to do it, and then we vote on it next month. That's my suggestion at this point.
I happen to agree with that, just so that we make form a resolution that logically follows the grid pattern, but might also account for the historical significance. There may be plaques around that intersection that may preserve some of the history. Ronnie, you had your hand up.
I agree. That's all I wanted to say. I agree with what Brian said. Put the reso out and go forward. Thanks.
Dee?
Is my hand still up? I put it down. Thank you.
Well, Anne, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, I'm sort of sorry that Andrew's not here, because my understanding is that he had drafted something over the last month, which I think if we don't have that draft, it's all the more reason to hold it till next month. So I'm good with that.
Okay. Larry?
Just want to remind the committee that last month I had mentioned the MTA has had a protocol of naming its bus stops after the just past intersection. So Mitchell Place or 49th Street would be the primary naming intersection. I made a suggestion then that it could be Mitchell Place / East 50th Street or East 49th Street, but it really should be the street that was immediately passed.
I think to summarize, Andrew was exchanging emails with some of the committee members, and he was going to write a resolution, and we'll probably see it before our meeting next month, which will incorporate the protocols. And if there is some historical or the historical significance can also be possibly addressed, we have a month to include that as well. The next agenda item is to discuss possible street redesigns to make the area around Grand Central Terminal more pedestrian friendly. There's been some major improvements to that end. What would we like to consider in addition to that? This can also build off of some of the mid-Park Avenue malls from 34th to 39th, although that is down the line. Something that Gene was credited with addressing in the AM New York article that I believe was sent out to the committee. Were there any other ideas, pockets where we could make a pedestrian, perhaps a POP, private-owned pedestrian space, or private-owned public space, rather, or a street redesign? Ronnie, you have your hand raised?
Hi. Yes, there is a small startup that has developed a bike storage system that would be perfect for the side streets. It's large enough to act as a traffic deterrence, and the top has a sustainable like green feature. The pod itself is very sustainable and secure, and it would be a great addition. It's a good size, sort of several bikes, keyless storage, membership, and very stylish. And I think it, I would love to send it to the committee and get their thoughts for sure. Thank you.
Bike storage as part of in addition to what's already around Grand Central? And
Yes.
you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts. One is certainly one that we've talked about a lot over the years, which is kind of doing to 44th Street, what was done with 43rd between Lex and 3rd, to make that, I cannot remember what the technical term is for it, but it's kind of, you know, it does allow cars going through, but they're things to slow them down, and there's like these big stones that you can sit on, so it's it's kind of more pleasant to hang out. And so I think that's something DOT had already looked on. I know since before it was 43rd Street was chosen for this, 44th was an alternative for that. So that's one idea. um and then the other idea is, um, I don't know if anybody's been around the plaza just north of 42nd between Grand Central and Lexington. And I know that's not, I'm sorry, between Grand Central and One Vanderbilt. And, I know that's not our district, but it's really, they've done a really very nice job on it. It's really lovely. And if there's some way that we can, I don't know what it is, but if there's some way we can sort of activate so it feels like this space is in some way more continuous, that we can connect kind of the east side of Grand Central with what's happening over there on the west side. I don't know what the answer to that is, but it's a question. And if you haven't gone and seen the space, it's worth a visit.
Yeah, I don't think you can make it contiguous in any of the four directions, because to the east, if it's the same space we're thinking of, to the east you got Grand Central, to the west you got a building, to the north you got a street, and then to the south you're bordered by 42nd Street.
Well, I mean, it might not have to be like literally contiguous, but maybe, if there's, depending on what we talk about happening to course, is kind of our core area to pay attention to. If there are things we can do that will kind of make people realize, like, hey, there's what's going on the west side and also what's going on the east side. I think about corridors in wildlife biology. Space is used a lot more when it's contiguous, like the density of use is much more effective. And so I feel like if we look at Grand Central, maybe not as a barrier, but as a corridor, um, that it's just a way of thinking differently that may give us some design ideas.
When you mentioned the stones on 43rd Street, we discussed that, I think, about 18 months ago. And I don't think everyone really, I think it was a half-finished project, perhaps, because I remember some discussion that people didn't really sit on the stones, and they even felt endangered because the stones are in what was a parking spot. So just a few feet away from the stones, you have vehicular traffic, and people were like, you're sitting on an uneven stone, and then, you know, a taxi cab drives by you. But if DOT is considering that to make other spaces around Grand Central more pedestrian friendly, or, you know, more of like a recreation sitting space, that's their choice as to what to install. But I believe that was some
Yeah.
feedback.
I mean, I have to say, if you, I mean, this is before COVID, of course, but if you walk through that area at lunchtime, you know, one of the reasons they did 43rd Street first was because there were kind of a bunch of kind of takeout kind of restaurants, sort of like casual, you know, sort of fast food, but not McDonald's. And there were, those stones were always used. Like there were always people sitting on them eating lunch. So I think it was well utilized.
James,
Yes,
Mr. Wilson, do you have?
yes. First point, the east side of Grand Central, Lexington Avenue, is our area. There were stones placed there and on the side street, 43rd Street, for safety. They were designed to keep people from attacking Grand Central Station. Heavy stones would obstruct any trucks or any other type of vehicles that might be part of an attack on Grand Central Station. That's where the stones came from. I spoke to people about that. They were part of a safety defense. On the west side, which was Vanderbilt Avenue, that's become more of a sitting park area, and it's been decorated in that sense. So Vanderbilt Avenue is more of a, shall we say, leisurely setting. That's one opinion on the subject. Thank you.
I think DOT has their hands full in terms of what will best use the space for pedestrians and also not make it safe from various obstructions or elements. Ronnie, you have your hand raised.
Thank you. Back to Anne's comments regarding thinking of the area as a corridor. I would have to agree 100% as far as it being a type of a place to focus to, you know, come up with a great streetscape, and to extend it is very viable. I happen to go through that area frequently, and I have taken photos of a great deal of the area, and to make some sort of cohesiveness through that area is an excellent idea. It will expand it and bring the people into the spaces that are created instead of not being delineated. So it's and it extends it further south, and it's a wonderful idea. And there's so much that can be done. Thank you.
I'm sure that DOT is going to consider this, but you know, 42nd Street and Lex all the way up to Vanderbilt is one of several entrances or exits to Grand Central. And if those street corners get busy, then you have, you know, the intersection of a lot of pedestrians and a lot of cars. So to the degree that inbound on a train residents can maybe get diverted to other exits is something that I'm sure DOT will consider. Moving on, are there any other comments about street redesigns around Grand Central? No. The third agenda item is a report from the New York City Department of Transportation. Colleen, please update us.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Colleen Chatterton from City Department of Transportation. So I have an update regarding our Lexington Avenue Sidewalk Extension project. We came to the community board and we have presented this project this year, and it's delayed for next year because we are trying to finish up our 2020 projects along with early 2021 projects. So the Lexington Avenue project is delayed, and I will keep the community board updated once we have a timeline for implementation.
Refresh my memory. Sidewalk extension on Lexington Avenue, between what street?
You know what? I don't have the presentation in front of me. I think there are a few in Community Board 6 as well as Community Board 5 because it's a dividing line. It's part of the East Midtown rezoning project. And the sidewalk extensions are planned to be done in temporary materials. And eventually they're going to be done with concrete. They're going to be reconstructed with concrete later on as part of our capital program. But I can get you all the information. I think it's just a few locations in CB6, maybe 3.
Colleen, are you referring to the Lexington Avenue redesign between, I want to say 43rd and 52nd?
That's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, CB6 passed a resolution on that.
Yes, supporting it.
Excuse me, would you repeat those streets for us, please?
43rd to 57th on Lex.
52nd, I believe it was. I'll pull up the resolution right now just to confirm.
That's correct, Brandon.
Brandon will, thank you.
And of course, we have our holiday construction. We have our holiday construction embargo, which is coming up November 15th to the first week in January, which is a lot of construction will be on hold. The only work that's going to be done is emergency work in Manhattan. So all, other constructions are going to be on hold until the holiday embargo. This would ease up the traffic.
I'm sorry, Colleen, did you say that starts November 15th?
Correct, November 15th to the first week in January. And we do this every year. We do the holiday embargo every year. And it's, again, to ease up the traffic congestion during the holiday.
So what are the hours for DOT construction under the embargo?
Well, I mean, again, under the embargo, it's only emergency work that's going to be done. And it depends on, the location. Normally our construction hours are probably during the day, it's, 7 a.m. to maybe I want to say 4 p.m. or so forth. And if, night work is permitted, it's, from 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. to, depending on the hours that the developer is requesting and us granting it, given the traffic condition in the area.
Okay.
So I mean, the holiday construction embargo, the locations where construction is on hold until, the first week in January, all that location is on our website. I can email the link to Brendan on Wednesday so he can share it with the community board. And that's all.
Thank you. Super, thank you.
You're welcome, Philip.
The chair's report, or excuse me. Are there any members of the public who have a question or a comment on any of the agenda items, and I'll get to in a second, that have been discussed? Anne, you have your hand raised?
I do. I have a few questions for Colleen, if you don't mind. Um,
Okay.
One of them is about the Queensboro Bridge, and I think, or whatever, the Ed Koch Bridge. I think you've been notified a few times that I have noticed the outer roadway on the lower level, the Queens-bound outer roadway is closed, which is fine, but it is not posted on either the weekly traffic advisory or the weekend advisory.
So,
And
and we share that information with the community board.
I'm
And
sorry, it's not on the DOT website, Colleen.
we don't put that. I don't, that's not on
How
the
are people
DOT.
supposed to know if you don't put it on that? Like, that's
No,
where
no, no, no.
people,
And it is, you know what? I have to check the website. It is on our website under the Ed
it,
Koch project.
it is not. And
Okay.
I have taken screenshots, which I have shared with the board office and with Jean. Colleen, they talk about other lane closures. They do not talk about the outer roadway closure.
Okay, and I'm gonna confirm that, but I did share with Brendan, Anita's contact info. So Anita is the liaison for that particular project. And she's going to, make sure that Brendan is added onto that email about, any updates that we have in any upcoming updates we have. But I'm gonna check. I'm pretty sure that information is on our website.
I'm happy to send you the
Yeah.
screenshots that I took on a few of the days.
That won't be
I've sent them to
necessary.
the board office where it says, I'm sorry?
That won't be necessary. I'll confirm it with Anita and I'll get you the link of where it's shared and send that to you.
Okay, but I mean, I'm not worried about it so much for myself, honestly. I'm worried about it for the people who get up to 59th Street and find it's closed. Like, why shouldn't it be listed on the weekly or weekend traffic advisory like all the other bridge closures are?
Right. I mean, I know there is a weekly traffic advisory or
And it
weekly
is,
information that's sent out to
yep,
all of the
not there.
stakeholders. Oh, I'll find out. I'll find out and I'll let you know.
Okay. The other two questions that I had were actually both about bus stops. One is that the M15 SBS bus stop that is kind of described as the 42nd Street bus stop
Okay.
actually stops at 44th Street. And even by the DOT kind of protocol, it should be called the 43rd Street bus stop. So I kind of just wondered what's up with that. And, maybe that's something you can check out if you can understand why that happened.
If you can send me an email, I'll be more than happy to look into it. I'll check with our bus
Okay,
stop management
I'll send it to Jean and um,
and copy Brendan on it as well.
yeah, absolutely. But I know
Thank
Jean
you.
wants everything going through him. So
Okay.
um, Um, the other bus stop is I'm on next door, this kind of neighborhood group, and
Mhm.
I've been noticing some grumbling and a lot of different opinions as to what's going on with the Third Avenue bus stop, the bus stop, the M101, 102, 103 bus stop that used to be on Third between 33rd and 34th Street, and now it goes from the 31st to I think 37th are the two stops. And like people just had a lot of different theories about what's what's stopping that from going uh from that stop from being replaced, and whether it's like because people are saying it's on 34, it's like the northeast corner construction. So if we could get some clarity on
And again, send me an email on it. I'll find out from our bus stop management. I don't know if there's any construction going on there. Maybe the stop is temporarily relocated because of that.
no
So I
this stop has been closed for I want to say
mhm.
3 years, because there was a building built right there, but that construction is completed, but there's other stuff, and there was a whole delay because there was like Con Ed work being done. The building construction had to be halted. I don't know if this rings any bells to you.
Isn't that where the DDC project is for the water mains?
I think it is.
Yes.
But
This,
and I think that's on the north side, right?
May I
Just-
interject? The water main project actually involved the block from 33rd to 32nd Street. And that's where there was a bus stop. It was 33rd Street, right on the corner. That became the BX-M1 bus stop, which is what it is now. That is
Right.
between,
That's not what people are talking about.
but it has impact on the 34th Street, which was the original stop, the 31st Street, which was a later stop for 101, 102, and 103 buses. And a major problem that we've had over a period of time has been with BX-M1 buses laying over in the bus stops which are actually signed 101, 102, 103.
I think that's a different issue. And going back on what you're saying is that whenever there's a bus stop and there is an upcoming construction work that's occurring near a bus stop, and if it affects, the safety of commuters within that area, DOT will work with MTA to relocate that stop temporarily. And once that construction is completed, the contractor will notify DOT and will work with MTA to get the
Right. No,
paperwork.
I
to
understand that.
relocate the
I
stop.
understand that. I
Yeah.
mean, this stop was not relocated. It was just canceled.
It was, but
Like
it
was not relocated.
So if it
So
was canceled, that's I think that is something. If you can just send an email, because that would be an MTA
well,
inquiry.
if you look on like the My MTA app, it shows it as a like temporarily rerouted. There's no step. Like it shows it as
Yeah, but
an
that's
alert. Like,
MTA's decision. MTA made that decision. That wasn't a DOT decision. So you would need to direct that to the MTA to find out why it was rerouted.
okay, so
DOT
this community advisory says reopening.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what, 3 months ago, 4 months ago.
Yeah, just to interject here, for a while, this bus stop was, it was not in use. It was closed due to the DDC project in the area. And the office got this flyer a few months ago saying that this bus stop at 3rd and 34th is returning. So it's a little bit of a puzzle to me as to what has happened, because it sounds like this stop is closed again. So it makes me wonder if it's something related to the DDC project, but
Well, I had heard from people, I mean, I think I talked to Gene about this specifically, but that DDC project is not finished yet. And it's, it has other impacts in the neighborhood, especially for the fact that now it's going over the timeline that they said it was. But if the bus stop was affected by the DDC work and the DDC work is still going on, I think we have our answer.
It's not going to be restored back. That's right. It's not going to be restored until the DDC work is completed. Brian
So
is
I'm wondering
absolutely right.
if we can get some kind of timeline, and I will post on Nextdoor, hey guys, you need to be a little bit patient. It's still part of this work. We're anticipating, especially.
Brendan,
I mean, I had to tell local businesses in the area the same thing lately, and we didn't get a timeline out of DDC. I suggested to the chair, I don't know if there's any progress on this, but I suggested to the chair inviting DDC to the committee in case, they want to update us and give us an update about what timelines are and talk to the public about that. That might light a fire under their butts.
So Brendan, I think it'll be best maybe if you reach out to Karen Flores to ask her about the timeline for, their work and completion and when that bus stop is going to be restored back. Because Brandon raised a good point where if the DDC work is not completed, that stop is not going to be restored until that work is done.
Well,
let's see what DDC has to say. That seems to be the result. And if they say it's going to take a very long time, maybe then we could discuss perhaps reopening, making that bus stop operational so that residents aren't, so that they have a bus stop if that's possible.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with the medical facilities and the crosstown buses there, It's a loss.
Okay,
So Brian,
So,
are you gonna be
Brendan-
like who's gonna follow up with DDC to see what we can get in terms of timing?
I will.
Maybe someone from next door would take some initiative on this.
No,
The
these are just
committee can
regular
email.
people. They're not, no, none of, they're all just talking. But Brendan, did you say maybe you can check on that?
Yeah, just so that I can verify, the timeline we're checking on specifically is with regards to the bus stop or the project as a whole? Because if you're wondering about the timeline for the project as a whole, that information is actually, I can show it right now. That information is on our work notices
the work
page.
But that's not going to answer the question about the bus stop, really.
But if you're wondering about the bus stop specifically, I can reach out to Karen Flores associated with the project to see whether this is something related to the project, because we as you saw, we did get a flyer in July indicating that this bus stop was reopening. So if it's closed again, that's something that we need to know so that our work notices page can have accurate information, so that people in the community can just generally be informed as to what's going on.
Excuse me. Brendan,
Yes?
Yes, James.
Karen Flores has all the information. And when she completed the major part of her water pipe work, the thought was that the bus stop at 33rd Street and 3rd Avenue would return. It did not return. And the 101, 102, and 103 specifically stop at 31st Street and 3rd Avenue and at 29th Street and 3rd Avenue. I live there, and that's exactly what's happening now and has been happening for some time.
I don't think it ever reopened. I don't think it's a matter of opening and closing. It never reopened.
So let's see why not. If a public announcement was made, let's see why we couldn't follow through on it. And if it's related to the DDC progress, Karen can tell us that.
In the interim, BX1M bus stop has been inserted between 33rd and 32nd Street. The sign there is specific, BX1M, which is bus service that goes all the way up to the west side of Manhattan above the George Washington Bridge.
Thank you, James. Larry, you have your hand raised?
Yes, I'm going to change the subject, but this is quite important in light of the upcoming moratorium on construction. Colleen, I'd like to try to get up to date with you on what is happening on Avenue C. The bike path does not appear to be complete. The green paint is not down.
Yeah.
And south of 14th Street, there is a real horror show with restaurant sheds not having been moved away from the curb to make space for bicycles. And as of today, the part of East River Park that's going to be reconstructed is closing. And so there's a great urgency here, and up against a construction moratorium. I'd like to know where we are now and what we can expect to see in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, so Larry, we continue to work with DDC on that particular issue. I know the Avenue C bike lane, we are, the goal is to try to complete that bike lane before the winter sets in. I know the crews are working on that, trying to get, things up and running with it. I know CB6 Land Use Committee has reached out to DDC about DOT attending a meeting, and DDC is coordinating that. So we're going to follow up with DDC on that and attend that, see what they say in terms of when that meeting is, so the agencies can be there. But the goal is to complete, the Avenue C bike lane before the winter sets in.
Well, I think that meeting relates to the planning between 18th and 20th Street. We're dealing with a more immediate concern here, which is that you have a construction moratorium that how is that going to impact the completion of this work before winter?
So we can, lift that construction moratorium and allow DDC to and allow for that work to be done, based on the fact that it's important that the bike lane is completed. So we can work around that.
Okay, I just wanted to highlight the urgency of this.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Colleen and Larry. So just to summarize, someone from Gene may sit on land use. So I think he will be informed at their next meeting. He'll hopefully have a status on if DDC can attend and update when they're going to put the paint down to declare the bike lane.
DDC is working with the land use committee on a date when they'll go back to the community board on that with DOT, and I think with EDC as well.
Well, I also serve on that committee, and they always say we defer to Department of Transportation for updates. And please go to the Transportation Committee meeting to find out what's going on.
Well,
And here we are.
hopefully now that, let's see what progress we can make in the next month, be it land use, transportation, but getting, at least 3 parties in the same Zoom session together and getting a concrete update about some paint, particularly because December 21st, the start of December, after which I think you run the risk that painting cannot get done. I'm not certain about that. Colleen, can you put paint down on the street in January, February?
No, it's too cold because the thermoplastic is not going to adhere to the roadway. So we try to do everything, before before it starts to get really cold. We've been fortunate in having nice weather, so we were able to push and get a lot of work done with roadway markings.
Okay, so it's either 7 weeks or it's going to be, you resume putting paint down, I'm going to assume, when spring starts, which is March 21st.
That's correct, early
Or maybe-
spring.
Okay, around March. So it's either 7 weeks or it's 4.5 months.
Correct, our paving season will begin in March, spring.
Brian, you have a comment?
Yes, regarding repainting, just note that recently East 23rd Street in our district was ground and repaved. It has not been repainted. It is causing a very dangerous condition along that corridor because the cars that take 23rd Street seem to, well, just never play nice, even when there are paint, even when there is paint on the ground. But that's also an SBS corridor, and any sort of traffic chaos additionally holds up the SBS buses. If it could be a critical priority to get paint down there, that would be great, because our experience in the same district, in the same area, with 2nd Avenue being milled and repaved, was that it took 8 weeks for paint to be put down in the middle of summer.
Okay, we can follow up on that. Any other questions for Colleen and DOT? No? Thank you, Colleen, for the update. We'll be in touch regarding these issues for next month.
Great, thank you.
The chair's report. Thank you. I will waive it on Jean's behalf. and continue with old and new business. If any member of the committee has any old or new business, please raise your hand to resume. You may have addressed. With any further outstanding agenda items, I request a motion to adjourn the meeting. Any objections?
This is Brian, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Seeing no further business, the meeting is adjourned at 7:55. Thank you, Brian.